Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we dig into the sources to bring you the insights that, well, really matter. We try to make complex stuff incredibly clear.
That's the goal.
So today we're wrapping up our journey through the Ten Commandments. And we've saved, perhaps, one of the most misunderstood for last, thou shalt not covet.
Ah, yes. Coveting.
Now, I think for most of us, this commandment sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Like a simple moral rule.
Right. Don't want what your neighbor has. Their car, their job.
Exactly. Their fancy new gadget, or, what looks like their perfect life online. It feels very internal, a private battle against envy.
That's definitely the common take, yeah. A deeply ingrained idea that it's about policing your own thoughts, personal desire.
And I mean, if it is just a thought, how could any legal system possibly prove that or punish it? You can't exactly put someone on trial for, what's just going on inside their head.
Seems impossible, right?
But our deep dive today, and we're drawing heavily from insights found on the Athea YouTube channel's series on contract law through the Ten Commandments. Well, it suggests we might have profoundly missed the point here.
It really flips the script.
It's promising to reveal a meaning that's not only much, much deeper, but frankly, pretty revolutionary.
It's a powerful reinterpretation, definitely. And it connects back, doesn't it, to our last deep dive on the ninth commandment.
You shall not bear false witness.
Yeah. We found that wasn't just don't tell a fib. It was this potent warning against religious fraud, against deceptive teachings. It demanded like an active engagement with truth.
Right, discerning what's real.
And this final commandment, the 10th, it builds right on that. It pushes us beyond just avoiding bad thoughts into, well, a pretty profound commitment to social action, an action rooted in the very real, sometimes harsh realities of ancient society.
So much more than just don't be jealous. This is maybe about a radical demand for justice that shapes a whole community.
That's the core idea we're exploring. Let's unpack what the source reveals.
Okay, let's start where most people are. Coveting feels internal, personal, a thought, not an action. And if it's just a thought, legally it seems unenforceable. So what deeper dimension does the source bring out?
Well, the source's main argument is that this isn't just about private morality. It's framed as a foundational demand of contract law, specifically God's covenant, God's contract with Israel.
A contract, okay.
And when you see it as part of a communal agreement, a binding contract, its scope changes dramatically.
That's a huge shift in perspective. Okay, So our source points to the text itself, right, to show this.
Exactly. It highlights Deuteronomy 5.21. Let's see, it reads, "You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and you shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or his male or female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor."
Okay, and compared to the version in Exodus 20, Deuteronomy adds stuff, right, like field.
Right, field is new there. And also that broader phrase at the end, all your neighbor's possessions. It makes it more comprehensive. But there's something else too, a change in the order of the items listed.
Oh, what's that?
A really crucial detail, the source argues. In Deuteronomy, wife comes before house. Exodus has it the other way around.
Wife before house. Okay, why does that matter? Seems subtle.
The source suggests it's not subtle at all. It's deliberate. It signals a specific emphasis. It's about making the command more specific, yes, but also highlighting certain things that were absolutely crucial for this covenant community. It points towards a legal and social purpose that goes way beyond just individual thoughts or desires.
Got it. So these aren't just random examples like a shopping list of things not to want. They're intentional. There's a deeper design here.
Precise.
So if it's not just about don't think bad thoughts, what's the revolutionary active command that thou shalt not covet might actually imply? You mentioned earlier how Jesus often turned do-nots into do's.
That's exactly the lens the source applies here. It's quite radical. If you transform do not covet from just stopping a thought into an act of instruction, its meaning just explodes outwards.
Okay, give me an example, like do not covet your neighbor's house.
Right. So beyond just don't wish you had their house, the source argues this could actually demand. Now, this sounds maybe a bit extreme at first, but it could demand that if your neighbor is without a home, you are actively obligated to help solve that problem.
Whoa. Okay. That is profoundly different. Helping find them a home.
Yeah. Actively engaging in fixing the problem.
What makes that interpretation, makes sense within the whole covenant idea? Why would it be so central?
It makes profound sense when you look at the bigger picture of God's covenant with Israel. The source emphasizes that the whole spirit of the covenant is rooted in Israel's collective trauma, their experience as slaves in Egypt.
Okay, the Exodus story.
Right. And the goal for the Promised Land, for Canaan, wasn't just finding a place to live. It was about building a society where those specific tragedies, falling into debt, losing your land, losing your home, ending up enslaved, where those things would never happen again. That was a core objective.
A kind of social safety net built into the foundation.
You could say that. And you see concrete examples in the laws themselves. Think about the Jubilee year, the sabbatical year laws.
Debt forgiveness, land returning to families.
Exactly. Those were designed specifically to prevent irreversible poverty and loss. It's about social justice baked into the legal structure.
And this connects to the golden rule too, I guess. Do unto others.
Absolutely. What's the most desperate need, the most desperate desire of someone who's homeless?
A home, shelter, security.
Right. So actively helping them get one isn't just charity. It becomes a concrete act of fulfilling that command, loving your neighbor as yourself.
It reframes love your neighbor into something very practical, very structural.
And there's another layer. When God promises in the covenant, I will be with you, the source suggests this often means God working through the community, through people. So solving the problem of your neighbor lacking a house isn't just, humanitarian good work. It's seen as actively participating in establishing God's just rule on earth. It makes faith inherently about social responsibility.
That really does reframe the whole spiritual mandate.
Okay, let's circle back to that specific point in Deuteronomy, putting your neighbor's wife first. You said it was significant. Why? Especially given the ancient context.
Yeah, to really get the weight of that, we have to face some pretty grim realities of the ancient Near East. It's hard for us to imagine, maybe, but think about times of famine, war, crushing debt. These things could absolutely shatter a family.
How so?
People would lose their farm first, maybe, then their house, and finally, if things got desperate enough, they'd lose their freedom. They'd become slaves or bondservants.
The whole family?
Often, yes, leading to the complete breakup of the family unit. The husband might become a laborer somewhere else. And tragically, wives and daughters were frequently sold into what was called maid service. But let's be clear, this was effectively female slavery. Children could be sold off too. It was just a devastating cycle.
And the situation for female slaves specifically, I imagine it was particularly brutal. Absolutely harrowing. Across much of the ancient world, female slaves were often seen as property, pure and simple, not as persons with rights. They faced horrific labor exploitation, and very commonly they were subject to the sexual demands of their masters. It was a widespread, accepted tragedy.
Just awful. So how did Israel's covenant law, this supposedly revolutionary contract, address that specific horror?
This is where it gets incredibly radical for its time. Those sabbatical and jubilee laws we mentioned, they directly attacked this system. Under Israelite contract law, slavery wasn't supposed to be permanent. A Hebrew slave had to be freed after 6 years.
Okay, temporary servitude, not lifelong possession.
Right. But even more striking, the source emphasizes they weren't just kicked out empty-handed after 6 years. The law required they be given substantial provisions, basically. Wages for their time served enough to actually reestablish themselves and their families. Give them a real chance to start over.
So it wasn't just freedom on paper, it was empowered freedom, resources to rebuild.
Exactly. And, crucially, regarding female slaves, the law specifically mandated that even though they were in servitude due to hardship, they were to be treated as persons. Persons who would eventually rejoin their husbands, reunite with their children, restore their families. They were explicitly not to be viewed or treated as sexual objects or permanent laborers.
Wow. So, thou shalt not covet your neighbor's wife. Or, as it sometimes implies, their female slave. It isn't just about adultery in the way we usually think of it.
The source argues it's far, far deeper than that. It's a revolutionary demand to protect the fundamental dignity and personhood of the most vulnerable women, those forced into servitude by poverty. It's about preventing their sexual exploitation and, crucially, ensuring their right to family restoration, their right to lead fully human lives again.
That's quite something. And you're saying this was unique, this level of protection.
Yeah. The source stresses the uniqueness, yeah. In the context of the ancient Near East, finding another law code or religious system that puts such specific emphasis on protecting female slaves and ensuring their path back to their families, it's apparently very rare, if not unique. It reflects a core value in God's covenant, the protection and restoration of the family unit, especially for the vulnerable.
That completely reframes it. It moves from just personal ethics to a foundational principle of social justice, human dignity, family preservation. Okay, so this logic clearly applies to female slaves. What about the other items? Male servants. even the livestock oxen and donkeys. How does the commandment extend there?
Well, for male servants, the logic holds consistently. They also weren't to be treated as mere tools or permanent assets. They were individuals with inherent dignity, part of the covenant community temporarily, with the recognized right to eventual freedom and an independent life. It reaffirms that same contractual spirit. Treat them as persons destined for independence.
Okay, makes sense. But the animals, oxen and donkeys, surely that's just about not wanting your neighbor's property.
The source suggests it goes deeper, even there. It's not just about property. It includes an ethical demand extending to how you treat even working animals. You shouldn't overwork them, abuse them. You need to show them consideration, care.
Like what? Any specific examples?
Yeah, some interesting ones, like animals, just like humans, were supposed to rest on the Sabbath, no work.
Okay.
And they were supposed to get special food feed mixed with beans, for instance, when doing really strenuous work, like threshing grain. And then there's that really famous verse, right? You shall not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain.
Yes. Let the poor ox eat some of the grain it's working so hard to process.
Exactly. It's not just about maximizing output. It reveals this underlying ethos in the covenant community, a profound respect for life, the source calls it, that extends even to the animals sharing in the work and its rewards. A really beautiful picture, actually.
It really is. So, putting it all together, the 10th commandment isn't just like the last rule on the list. It's almost like a grand finale, summarizing the spirit of all the others.
That's a great way to put it. It kind of encapsulates why Israel should follow all these commands and worship only Yahweh.
How so?
Because, the argument goes, no other god, no other religious system in the ancient world apparently showed such concrete, practical concern for the rights and welfare of the really vulnerable, the poor, slaves, women, even the animals. Yahweh's faith, in this view, isn't some abstract philosophy or just focused on getting to heaven. It's inseparable from the hands-on, active practice of social justice right here, right now, protecting the weakest.
This deep dive has seriously shifted my view already. But the source goes even further, right? It has a pretty sharp critique about how some biblical teachings get misunderstood, like portraying poverty itself as some kind of virtue.
Yes, this is a really important and often challenging point the source makes. It argues that interpreting poverty or non-possession as some kind of spiritual ideal is a profound distortion.
A distortion. How?
Well, it points to historical examples, like, say, medieval monastic movements. You had individuals within the monasteries practicing personal poverty, which is one thing, but often the broader society around them was still deeply stuck in systems like serfdom with massive social injustice.
So the personal piety didn't really change the unjust structures outside the monastery walls.
That's the critique, precisely. The source argues this separation represents a misunderstanding of true faith. And it connects this back quite pointedly to the Ninth Commandment, seeing this as a form of false teaching that actually allowed societal corruption to continue, or even worsen.
Wow. So the core message isn't learn to endure poverty virtuously.
No. The source insists the core message is eradicate poverty. The entire goal of the covenant society was supposed to be a just community where everyone's basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, are actually met. It's a call to systemic change, not just individual resignation.
Eradicate, not endure. That's powerful. Okay, what about teachings like Jesus saying, do not refuse the one who wants to borrow from you? How does that fit? It often gets taken as, just give to anyone who asks, no questions asked.
Right, and the source argues that's another misunderstanding when ripped out of this contract law context. The spirit isn't about enabling freeloading. It clarifies it. This command is about helping those facing unavoidable, extreme circumstances. People who've genuinely tried everything else and are now in desperate, immediate need. Don't abandon them in that moment.
So it's conditional compassion based on genuine need and effort, not enabling laziness.
Exactly. It contrasts sharply with, say, supporting someone who is lazy or trying to rationalize dependency. The source points to Apostle Paul, who was apparently very direct about this.
What did Paul say?
He wrote pretty bluntly, if anyone is unwilling to work, neither should they eat. A strong warning against enabling idleness. Paul himself, apparently, worked with his hands to support his ministry and used what he earned to help those who were genuinely unable to help themselves.
So there's a balance between compassion and responsibility.
Yes. And the source extends this to wealth itself. If someone acquires wealth, maybe through inheritance or success, it's not seen as just for personal enjoyment or hoarding. It comes with a kind of mission, a responsibility to use those resources to serve the community, to fulfill those social obligations we've been talking about.
Like that Geomju Choi family motto you mentioned.
Exactly like that. Ensure no one within 100 lives starves. That perfectly embodies this principle, the source suggests. Wealth isn't just yours, it's a tool for communal contribution and well-being.
This paints a picture of faith that's incredibly active, engaged with the world. It reminds me of what Jesus said, "As the Father has sent me into the world, so I am sending you into the world."
Precisely. The implication, according to this interpretation, is that confessing faith isn't just about securing your own individual salvation or spiritual growth. It's a call to become God's active agents in the world, God's representatives,
Representatives for what?
to actually establish God's justice and peace on earth, to help build a world where everyone can thrive. It connects back even to Abraham, the so-called father of faith. His blessing wasn't just for him or his descendants.
Right, it was for all nations of the earth to be blessed through him.
Exactly, a massive global mission of bringing justice and abundance, not just a private spiritual journey.
Okay, but the source we're drawing from has some pretty strong words for how modern faith often looks, doesn't it? A critique.
It does. It delivers a rather pointed critique, arguing that much of modern Christianity, unfortunately, has lost sight of this creative, socially transformative mission.
Lost sight how?
By developing an excessive focus maybe on just personal salvation or what happens in the afterlife. Often this comes at the expense of ignoring or sometimes even actively avoiding the messy realities of social injustice, suffering, and deep structural problems right here on Earth.
And the source uses some pretty vivid language for this, I recall.
Very vivid, yes. Critical terms like goblin faith or traveler's faith.
What do those mean?
They describe a kind of faith that becomes irrelevant or disconnected from the actual problems people face in the world. A faith that doesn't engage with suffering or injustice, but just focuses on personal comfort or future escape.
And again, it links this back to the ninth commandment, bearing false witness.
Yes, it diagnoses this distorted faith as a tragic consequence of falling prey to the very false teachings the ninth commandment warned against. Believing a version of faith that isn't true to its core mission.
And the source suggests this is why, perhaps, the church faces criticism today.
It argues this is a fundamental reason, yes, why the church has lost trust in many quarters and faces harsh criticism. Even those derogatory terms like orjong in Korean society are mentioned as evidence of this deep societal judgment. It's presented as a form of self-critique from within the faith tradition.
A very strong internal critique. And it culminates in that stark image about sermons.
Right. The source posits that if sermons consistently ignore the concrete issues, poverty, injustice, discrimination, environmental destruction, and only offer psychological comfort or promises of blessings later on, they become, quote, worse than a dog's bark.
Worse than a dog's bark, meaning?
Meaning completely useless as a warning or guide.
Yeah.
Empty noise. A dog is supposed to bark when there's danger or something wrong. If the sermon fails to address the real dangers and sufferings in the world, it fails its essential function. It's just sound, without substance or warning.
Wow. Well, this deep dive has definitely turned my understanding of the 10th commandment completely upside down. It's not just a simple rule against envy anymore.
Not at all.
It's revealed as this radical act of demand for social responsibility, protecting the vulnerable, restoring families, even caring for animals.
Yeah.
Ultimately working to eradicate poverty and build a truly just society, not just managing my own private desires.
That's the core takeaway. It really underscores that these biblical teachings viewed this way aren't meant to be abstract ideals floating in the air. They're powerful calls to get involved, to transform the concrete reality we live in here and now.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up this really profound exploration, here's something provocative for you, our listeners, to think about. If God's covenant, as interpreted here, calls us to such active social justice, such restoration of the vulnerable, what responsibility does that place on us today? In our society, facing our own issues like, say, housing instability, huge wealth gaps, labor exploitation, what perspective should we maybe adopt? And crucially, what practical actions might we feel compelled to take?
That's the real question, isn't it? What does it mean for us now? Truly something to reflect on deeply.
Indeed. Well, next time we're going to step back and provide a comprehensive overview, a synthesis of all 10 commandments, trying to bring all these threads together. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly insightful deep dive.